President Trump claiming another premature victory in North Korea this weekend after the country left its ICBMs out of its latest military parade. Trump celebrated that parade on Twitter, writing, quote, "This is a big and very positive statement from North Korea. Thank you, Chairman Kim. We will both prove everyone wrong. There is nothing like good dialogue from two people that like each other." I so want to correct his grammar. Who? Much better than before I took office. But new reporting from NBC News finds, quote, "The newest intelligence shows Kim's regime has escalated efforts to conceal its nuclear activity. U.S. intelligence assesses North Korea could produce 5 to 8 new nuclear weapons in 2018, according to 3 current and former senior U.S. officials. That pace is virtually identical to their assessment of the regime's production of about 6 per year prior to the Trump-Kim summit. Joining us at the table, NBC News national security and military reporter Courtney Kube, whose bylines on that report. That's stunning. So I want you to take me through 2 things. One, which you've reported on extensively, what Bob Woodward picks up in his book about this 2-track government, the building you cover, the Pentagon often in contact with its counterparts with a very, very different message than what comes from the White House.
Right, and we've seen it, of course, with Russia. Now we're seeing it with North Korea, where President Trump has this message for the dictator, for the leader, that is very positive. We're going to work together. We're going to build a coalition. We're going to, have this
like
dialogue.
A buddy movie, you and me.
Exactly. And then the administration comes in behind him as sort of the bad cop and does things like imposes sanctions and kicks out diplomats. And in this case, there's this new piece of intelligence. Of course, we reported over the summer several different times about how North Korea is continuing to work on its nuclear program. They're continuing to pursue their nuclear technology. So this is one more step in that, another effort that they're taking to conceal their program, the full extent of what they're doing. And then, of course, that they are still working towards building more nuclear weapons this calendar year. What President Trump, though, he continues to tweet these positive things to Kim Jong-un. Well, now the administration is saying we're going to reignite this maximum pressure campaign, which is a term that we heard earlier on in the Trump presidency. And in this case, they're going to start naming and shaming the people who are violating the UN Security Council resolution sanctions with these ship-to-ship transfers that are in violation of the sanctions, providing coal and other things to North Korea.
Economic warfare. Let me put you on the spot, because so much of the Woodward reporting was familiar to me because of your reporting. And I know that Mattis and Dunford are known to you, but let me just read some of this to you and have you sort of expand on it for us. So Woodward writes that within the White House, but not publicly, Trump proposed sending a tweet declaring that he was ordering all U.S. military dependents, thousands of the family members of 28,500 troops out of South Korea. The act of removing the dependents would almost certainly be read in North Korea as a sign that the United States was seriously preparing for war. Withdrawing dependents was one of the last cards to play. The possible tweets scared the daylights out of the Pentagon leadership, Mattis and Dunford. A declaration of intent to do so from the U.S. Commander-in-Chief on Twitter was almost unthinkable.
That's right. So I actually did a story about that, about 2 weeks after that meeting. I think it was February 2nd, saying that President Trump was very seriously considering pulling all dependence off of the Korean Peninsula. And Bob Woodward is absolutely right that was the sign. Whenever you talk to people at the Pentagon, when the pressure and the tensions were at their highest point in 2017 with North Korea, one of the things we consistently heard was, what you need to watch for is them pulling civilians out. When they're starting to take the families out, that's when war is coming. And so Woodward was right to write about that. And that's why the story that we reported on in February, months ago, was significant at the time. Of course, it didn't happen. So what happened in the immediate aftermath of that was that the Olympics started several weeks later. There was this diplomatic overture where North Korean athletes came to the Olympics and participated, and we saw Kim Jong-un's sister sitting there, feet away from Mike Pence and the First Family. And so that sort of kicked all that can down the road. And then my colleague Carol Lee and I did a story not long after that about how, in fact, Secretary Mattis and John Kelly were continuing to take decisions like this from President Trump and kind of keep shuffling the paperwork around so that nothing would ever happen on them.
Let me press you on that, though, because do they view Trump like as a fly that they have to swat away, or is it as dire as depicted that Mattis views his job as sort of standing between this impulsive, uninformed president and World War III?
Secretary Mattis definitely views his job as protecting national security and doing what's best for them.
From Trump?
from decisions, depending on who those decisions are. I certainly don't want to speak for Secretary Mattis, but I will say it's very clear in the way that he acts, right? You don't see him popping his head up very often. He wants to maintain a relationship with President Trump that means that Trump will continue to listen to him and to his advice that he gives. Of course, we've also done a story saying that there are a number of decisions that President Trump made that were counter to what Secretary Mattis recommended to him.
All right, I want to get everyone in on this. We have to sneak in a break. We're going to pick it up on the other side. Don't go anywhere.